The Indiana Hoosiers, losers of a pair of 25-point losses in a row, an embarrassing one at home against Illinois, T.O., in which they were chanting. The fans left, the students left, and they were chanting Fire Woodson. And they come back. They win this one on the road against a decent Ohio State team. Oumar Ballo, who's been called lazy over the last few days, responds and was dominant in the post. Is this enough to get the fans off of Mike Woodson's back, at least for a little while, Tio?
I'm going to say no, because sometimes it's not when you lose or who you lose to, it's how you lose to them. And the way they played over those last two games, there was no effort there. And I'm going to be honest, guys, like I'm sitting there watching this game against Ohio State. Oumar Ballo misses a layup. This is early in the first quarter. He had 10 points and 5 boards at this point. He misses a layup. He gets knocked to the floor. It takes him a solid 6.5, 7 seconds to get down to the other end, and then finds a guy, completely turns his back, gives a wide open three. Ohio State goes up 9. My first reaction, without looking at the stats, is like, this guy's got to sit. This is crazy. How could you accept this sort of behavior? After that, I'm not sure if he saw my tweet. I'm not sure if it was divine intervention, but Oumar Ballo was awesome. The dude was jumping out on ball screens like I haven't seen him do even at Arizona last year. Like some of the things he was doing from an effort perspective, I'm willing to live with. Goody, I thought, was terrific. He's had to step in, play a lot more 4 now that Malik Renault has been out. So you kind of see where this Indiana team can be good. But, guys, I'm going to be honest. We watched this game. This was not a coaching masterclass by either team. Now, you look at Woodson, you expect him to be a little bit better in these situations. That's a given. Looking on the other side, Ohio State, you don't get a shot off at the end of regulation. I think that's brutal. And then on top of that, there's a couple of plays towards the end of the game. No timeout. You try to let your guys rock. And Ohio State takes a lot of hard shots. And I think that's one of the things we've looked at with Diebler is he's going to have to learn this balance of letting your guys go and letting your talent flourish and also kind of reining them in. And with a first-year head coach and no previous head coaching experience, he's going to learn on the fly. How patient is Ohio State going to be with that? Because there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and I think tonight you saw a lot of the mistakes of a youthful coach.
Tyler, this was a pride game, in my opinion, for Indiana. They were embarrassed. They were called out. You know they're walking around campus last couple of days with their hoods on, their heads down. And I thought they at least played hard tonight in Columbus. It wasn't the prettiest win, but, they blew a 10-point lead late, held on in overtime. But I thought they played hard for the most part. How impressed were you with the effort, number one, and just, again, the pride that they showed?
Listen, effort should always be there. There's no excuse for not playing the game hard. That's basketball one-on-one at any level. And I will say I was disappointed in Indiana, especially losing on their home court to a rival by 20-something points. I thought there's no excuse for that. You got to show up and play those games, especially in front of your home crowd, your students there. Indiana's been hungry, and so they have no excuse to show up and lay an egg like that. And so is this a bounce-back game? You could say that maybe, but I will say you should always play the game hard. And I will say I got to give Ballo a lot of credit. Last time I was on here, he had a big game. And I think whenever there's a big inside presence and he plays the way he does, you saw Goody have a big game tonight too. He stepped it up, hit some big shots. But you should always play the game hard. I mean, I hate to get on here and give a team credit for playing hard. That should just be expected.
No, you're right. You're right, but it hasn't been with them. And I guess that's the thing is the bar has been set low for this team lately of not playing hard. So at least they came out and they didn't lay down. They weren't moping.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have bad body language. They came out. And again, this was a step, right? I mean, they've got a brutal schedule. There's not a lot of easy ones in the Big Ten. They've played a couple of the easier ones, but now they go at Northwestern, which Northwestern just beat Maryland last night. Maryland at home, at Purdue, at Wisconsin. I think, again, the beauty of this league, the SEC especially, Big 12 included, is you go on a little bit of a run here and you win 3 or 4 in a row against pretty good teams. You can make up a lot of ground and go from a team that is clearly outside of the bubble to firmly in the NCAA tournament. Now, again, I'm not saying beating Ohio State, they're not world beaters here, but it is a road win and it gets your kind of confidence back. And, I thought it was interesting because, they don't really have a backup big right now with Renew out. And Ballo is playing long minutes. When he was out of the game, I thought the kid Hatton, he did the best he could, but, he's a guy who really shouldn't see the court a whole lot. So when Renew's out of the game, some people think it's better because of their spacing, which it is, but they miss Renew in terms of when Ballo's out of the game. They don't have another low post guy. They don't have another true big man who can rebound, who can you get the ball to in the post. So I don't know, Tio. I mean, I don't have confidence that this team is going to flip it, but I think it certainly bought Mike Woodson a little bit of time, because if they lost again in this one by 25, I think then you're talking about AD Scott Dolson potentially having a decision on his hands whether this team quit on Mike Woodson. And right now, that's not on the table.
No, not on the table. But to go back to your point about Ballo, he went 40 minutes tonight. Game was in overtime. He went 40 minutes, and he brought it today. So I'm not going to complain about that today. It's just you can't have these lapses. And whenever you're coaching college kids, man, they're not just going to pick it up and bring it every night. In the NBA, you can pretty much bank on guys are going to come in, they're going to do their job. You understand, they understand what it's about.
Really? Wait, you cover LaMelo Ball.
That dude's balling. He's averaging 30 points a game.
Right,
he's going to come in. He's working. But it's one of those things where it's like, you have to get these guys ready to play. What I did notice today was Woods had said to hell with McKenzie Ibaka. We're like, I'm over it. I'm not playing him anymore. And he hasn't been good. Last game, he was 1 for 10. Tonight, he was 1 for 5. They went a little bit smaller in that backcourt. Kane and Carlisle end up playing pretty well. Big shot at the end. And I think, Trey Galloway, it's like he never has good numbers. Like every time I look at an Indiana box score, it's like poor shooting percentages, but he just impacts the game in other ways. So you look at the guys they had on the floor. Miles Rice dealt with some foul trouble. Leal is a role guy. It really came down to Goody, Carlisle, Ballo. 3-man team. Outside of that, how many of these kinds of games are you going to be able to string together? Because like you said, Jeff, the schedule is going to get much more difficult. The teams they have beaten conference, you look up and down, and I just had it right here, the teams they've beaten in conference, Nebraska, not great, 99th at Ken Pom. Rutgers is, I'm not going to call them a full-blown disappointment, but it's trending that direction. Penn State, fine, middle of the pack, NIT type of deal. USC kind of started to play better, but not towards the top of the league. So now it really gets to a point to where it's like, are we going to be able to string together some wins against some of the better teams in the Big Ten? Because the Big Ten is good. I've said for years that it's just kind of the top. It doesn't have that top end talent that we're accustomed to 10 years ago. But now you got to string some wins together against some of the better teams. But they have a little bit of a cushion. 5-3 in league play. Mike Woodson could go back and be like, well, we're 5-3 in league play. We're 14-5 overall. We're not. Right. This isn't dire straits right now. So he has some backing there.